Hi, Jim here, and you're listening to the Honest Filmmaker podcast, career advice from people in the business. This week, I'm speaking to television director Jamie Donoughue. Jamie had a really interesting route into television directing. He started off with a short film called Shok, which went on to get an Oscar nomination, and then moved into directing big budget American television shows before finally working his way back to the UK to direct the latest series of Doctor Who. This was a really good chat with Jamie because he was really honest about his route into directing television. We talked about his short film, his first debut short film that got him an Oscar nomination, and then how that led to the work he got on television. He also spoke about what it was like to go to those all important meetings with the executives from those TV shows, and he gives some tips on what to do and what not to do in those meetings. But really insightful, great chat. Enjoy. So, with most people, I start with this question: is did you go to university? Did you study? Where did you start with film?
I had a bit of a weird journey, actually. I had very little to do with film and TV. I think a lot of people as kids grow up and they want to be a director or they want to be an actor. All I ever wanted to do was judo. My entire life was doing judo.
Right.
And that's what I was going to plan to do. And then very randomly, we used to run this annual judo contest. And one of the kids' fathers said, "Would you like to film it?" And it turned out he was from a company called Provision in Leeds that used to supply all the cameras to Emmerdale. And I went, "Yeah, sure." And he turned up with the most incredible equipment, and it was like this 3-cam multi shoot. And I ended up finding myself directing this judo contest, and that's where I got the bug for it. So after that, then I took a year out and I went to work for a corporate production company locally in Leeds, and I learned to be a camera operator. And then I decided that was going to be my path. So I actually went to Salford Uni where I studied film and television production.
Right. And so you came looking at your IMDb profile. So you've sort of done something that people always, and I know it's a lot harder than this in practice, but when you look at your IMDb profile, you've gone short film, short film, short film, bang, he's directing television. Um, with the shorts, was that a strategy? Were you like, right, I'm going to make some short films, get myself noticed, or did you just end up making short films? How did that work?
It's really I'm always fascinated. And back then, I was always looking at every other director. How did they make it? How did they get in? What was their path? And as we know in this, there is no set path at all into it. And the IMDb, as useful as it is, it never tells the full story at all. And actually, how I ended up in it, it's quite crazy. But it came from I came out of university and I decided to set up a production company, and I became a music video director.
Hmm.
And we were all set up in Leeds, and we had what was quite a successful music video company back then, and we got known for breaking new artists, and we got to work with some incredible artists, and we were doing first stuff for like Michael Kiwanuka and the Vaccines and Royal Blood, and then we started growing as a company. And then we had to take on a lot of things to make it work, and we ended up doing like videos for Susan Boyle and the X Factor.
Oh, nice.
Um, and but I realized I was so unhappy because I was being a director of a company,
Hmm.
worrying about payroll, and I wasn't directing, and this just wasn't what I wanted to do at all. So I made a big decision, and I decided to sell the company and leave the company, and come down to London to get signed as a director to do drama. So I came down all buoyant, trying to get an agent, thinking everybody had signed me, and absolutely nobody cared whatsoever. And I used to reel off all my music videos and go, "But I've done Susan Boyle's music video," and nobody cared at all. And my sort of advice I got was, "You've got to prove yourself in drama, and maybe a short film could be the way."
Mm.
Um, but then completely randomly I ended up going to Kosovo for 3 days, which is out in the Balkans, and I didn't know very much about it. And on the second day, the Icelandic volcano erupted. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, and all flights had been grounded, and I ended up
Mm.
getting stuck in that country for 5 weeks, and it completely changed my life. And I had no idea what had gone over there, but there'd been this horrendous war in the late 90s, led by Milosevic, and I started to learn all about the war and the people brought me into their families and told me their experiences. And I just couldn't believe that something like this had gone on over there in modern times. And I thought to myself, this is the story I want to tell. I need to tell these people's story. So I was all buoyant. I eventually got back to London. I said, right, I've got this idea. And I went to try and raise a load of funding. And nobody would fund me at all. They were like, okay, you want to go to an ex-war-torn Yugoslav country and with a language that you don't speak and make a short, you're okay, no thanks. So I was like, so nobody would back me, but I knew I had to do this. And it wasn't so much about making a short in order to get recognized as a director. It became about the cause of what I wanted to do and use film to tell these people's stories. So for the next 4 years, I went back and forth between Kosovo and London, learned to speak the language as best as I could, learned all the history and everything that I possibly could. And I took a job building garden sheds. And I eventually saved up enough money and I went over there and then I shot my short film. And then I brought it back and I had absolutely no idea whether anybody would like it at all or not. And we put it into festivals and we still wasn't sure whether we like it. And then our first festival we got back was Aspen and we won all 3 awards there. And then it went crazy. And then we won 22 festivals back to back across the world. And then it got nominated for an Oscar. And all of a sudden I found myself sat next to Spielberg at the Oscars. And I was like, how the hell has this happened? So very quickly, my life changed overnight. And of course, I got an agent off the back of that, an amazing agent. And that's what got me into TV.
Wowzers. So that's interesting because it is the route that a lot of students think is going to work. So I'm going to make a short film, I'm going to get noticed. But obviously behind all of that is all this other stuff where you've kind of had to take crap jobs and do you know what I mean? It's been a total passion project. That's amazing. And I've seen a video, I think if I'm right, it's your team getting told there that you're Oscar nominated, and it is what as a filmmaker you would dream it would be like. It's like you've won the FA Cup final or something. You'd go the whole lot, go bananas. I mean, what was that moment like when you found out it was actually nominated?
It nearly didn't happen because we were making a decision whether we would go and get everybody together for the live nomination, because I was like, if this doesn't happen, it's going to be the most depressing moment of my life. And my producer, Harvey Ascott, said, yes, but if it does, it's going to be something that we'll remember forever. And it's so hard to describe. You can't really take a breath across that whole moment. And it's only when you look back that you really appreciate it. But it transcended what the short film was, because Kosovo wasn't recognized across the world as a country. And for them to get a nomination for the Oscar meant so much more. As I said, it transcended film off the back of that. The film was spoke about the UN. In the UN, we were invited by the Pope to go to the Vatican for the consecration of Mother Teresa. It was all off the back of that, and the actors and what happened to Kosovo was an incredible thing, and it meant more than that short film. It was a recognition on the world stage. So I think that's what that emotion was that was let out at that point. But I can't watch that back. Actually, it still gets me now.
It is a great moment, and it is on YouTube, so you can just search it up, watch it. There's some blue language in there, but it's as you would expect, just people swearing with joy. So that's awesome. So just talking about, so it's called Shok, isn't it?
Spelled Shok, which it means friend in Albanian.
Right. And where can you watch that now if you wanted to go back and see it?
It's on Vimeo, and it's on YouTube, and I'm sure you can get it anywhere. I'm sure it's been ripped a million times. Mainly Vimeo and YouTube.
Vimeo and YouTube. Okay. And so you were just saying you were directing in a foreign language, learnt a bit of the language. How on earth do you do that?
Albanian's a very, very tough language to learn. and I'm not very good at learning languages as well. So I tried my very best, and I actually, to be fair, because I immersed myself over there quite a few years ago, I got reasonably good at Albanian as well. And then on top of that, it became more of a technical thing, and it was a great lesson for me, because what I realized is when I was watching the performances in another language, it didn't matter fully whether I completely understood the language or not. You can feel a good performance. And then all I needed to do after that, when I felt it, was I turned to my script supervisor and I double check the pronunciation and language. I say, are you happy? Is that bang on? Those nuances of the language that I would never be able to know. So, and it was a mixture of that. And then I just learned a few technical terms in Albanian for dealing with the crew and everything. But yeah, it didn't really make that much difference for me, because, as I said, you can feel it. And I've taken that on into everything else I've directed before. It doesn't matter exactly the words that are said and stuff. You feel it inside you. There's an emotional resonance when you get a good performance.
Definitely. And so Oscar nominated. I'm assuming you were at the Oscars, sat in the audience. Were you on the night? How does that work?
Yeah, we were. Everyone always asks me what it's like. I suppose the best way of describing it is it's like a American presidential election campaign. You go on this journey for 6 weeks non-stop, touring America, showing your film, interviews, and then it all culminates in the night as well. And then obviously you're in the audience as well. So it was, as I said, it was a whirlwind, and you don't really get to take it all in at that moment. And actually, a couple of years after that, my producer Harvey and we went back to the Oscars just as guests. And actually, in a way, I sort of enjoyed it more then, because we managed to, all those memories flooded back, but without the huge immense pressure that came with it.
Yeah, I can imagine. And how soon after Oscars did you get your first TV gig?
So I actually signed with my agent before I got the nomination, because Harriet, who was back then at Troika, but she now runs Lark. She'd seen my film and then signed me early on. So there were things getting in motion. So as soon as I got back from the Oscars, I was put into generals. And this is usually what happens as a director when you become a new director on the scene. You go and meet loads of different production companies, and they get to know you and know that you're on the scene. So I did generals for about a month, and then probably within about 3 weeks after that, and I met Carnival for The Last Kingdom. And I'd met on something else before, and I didn't get the job. And I learned a really, really valuable lesson, because a lot of getting jobs on directing as well on TV is in the interview process. And the first job that I went up for, I went in and I was so sheepish, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm potentially gonna get a TV job here." And it was for season 2 of something, and the producer asked me, "What would you change from season 1?" And I was like, well, who am I to criticize them and this program? And I was like, oh, nothing. It's all great. It's all great. And I came out of there and I didn't get the job. And I remember my agent said to me, don't ever do that again. Be honest. They, whether they like your view or not, as long as you've got a clear vision of what you want to do, you'll either get the job or you won't. But people want clarity and a vision. And I took so much from that. And I went into my Last Kingdom interview and I was really clear. And I remember walking out of that room and I was like, they will either never call me again for any production at Carnival, or they'll give me the job. And luckily they gave me the job.
Amazing. That's a great tip. And then, so now you're doing this huge TV show with swords and big sets and costumes and all of that. So what's it like making the step from a short film to suddenly doing that?
It's it can get overwhelming. I'd done music videos and I'd done my short and I'd had a crew about 20, and then The Last Kingdom is TV on steroids. Even back then, we would have 300 essays. We'd have huge crews. And it was just a mammoth production. The sets were and I walked onto there, and I think the two things that stopped me getting overwhelmed was, One, I thought, no matter what, this can never be more nerve-wracking or more pressure than what I'd been through at the Oscars. And the Oscars gave me that barometer to deal with anything, which was great. And then the other thing is I got a really great piece of advice from a friend of mine, a producer in Leeds called Howard. And I've taken this on wherever you go, because things can get quite overwhelming and get ahead of you. And I realized that all filming at the end of the day is just a camera and an actor. And then the rest around it is just bump. It's just, and depending on your budget, it's bigger or smaller, but that's irrelevant. It actually all comes down to just a camera and an actor. And when you can take out all the noise around it, and then whenever you feel overwhelmed with anything or think things are getting ahead of you, you just go back to that one scene, one shot at a time, camera and an actor, and then you move on, and then you build. And then, very quickly, the novelty does wear off and you get used to all of this around you. So, but you know what? I was ready. That was the other thing. I was ready. I'd done this for so long, trying to break into the industry, that I just took the opportunity with both hands and ran with it.
Yeah, it's cool. And so on a just to understand logistics of it, when you're working on a TV show like that, and I've seen on your IMDb again, you do two episodes here, 3 of this, 2 of that. Do you are you there while the other ones are being made? Do you read every single episode in the series? Do you speak to the other directors? How does that work? Or do you just come in for your bit? How's it work?
It depends on the show. Yes, you read every single script. You're part of a massive jigsaw, and you have to understand what's come before you and what's going to come ahead of you as well. And to be able to direct, you should never be directing for your episode. You should always have the bigger picture, which is the whole series. So you need a complete understanding of what's gone on before and where the story's going. With regard to working with other directors, it depends what show it is. There was this thing I remember when we were at The Last Kingdom, when we ended up having 3 directors at once at one table, and everybody was laughing, saying, we've never seen this before. But for me, direction should all be about collaborating. It's, if someone else's episode is great, then it's always going to help you, because it's going to make the series better as well. And that's the key thing. Now, when I came on to Last Kingdom, I came on early, and I asked to come on early. And luckily, the first director was a guy called Peter Hoare, who's gone on to win. He's just won 2 BAFTAs back to back. Absolutely lovely, lovely guy. And he let me sit next to him at the monitor, and I sat through quite a lot of Block 1. And that was great. And it was a really good experience. And I just watched the logistics of how everything worked. And then I think John East was before me as well. I know, and John East is one of the most seasoned veteran directors you can imagine. I remember seeing how he worked, and he storyboards everything. Absolutely everything is laid out in the most beautifully drawn, incredible book of storyboards. And I saw that and I panicked, and I was like, I can't draw, I don't storyboard. And honestly, I don't shot list. I do everything in my head, mainly in the moment as well. Right. And I started possibly doubting myself a little bit. Is this how TV's done? And then I realized everybody has their own process. And it doesn't matter what it is, as long as you can deliver, you have your own process. So you can't compare yourself to other people. So that was a great lesson for me. And I learned so much so quickly in The Last Kingdom across that first series.
Yeah. Wowzers. I mean, I'm a storyboard man myself, but rubbish stick men storyboards, only because I find I forget stuff if I don't storyboard. So I don't know how you manage to do that. Keep it all in your head and make sure you've got a shot list, but make sure you've sort of captured all those moments. What, talking about being a TV director and a director in general, what sort of personal attributes do you think you need to do that job?
First of all, I think it's about getting rid of your ego. That's a massive thing. There's a lot of ego in this industry as well, and being an amicable, good person and being likable is a huge thing, because essentially you've got a lot of great people around you, and you just want everybody pulling in the right direction. So having people like you and want you to do well and want the program to do well is a massive thing. And also, the ability to create a great atmosphere on set for people to enjoy their work as well is a massive thing, because then people, you're not, people want to do better and want the show to do better. And, it can be an extremely stressful environment. So if you can take that stress out of it and enjoy it, I've always found that you get a much better working crew, and you can achieve what's in front of you. I think the ability to communicate is a huge thing. Clarity. One of the one of the difficult things is, as the director, is you're never on anyone else's set, really. You've no idea how anybody else directs at all. So I always ask actors, or I ask crew about when they've come off with somebody else. Oh, what's that director like? And if they're talking positive, they always say one thing: they were great. They knew what they wanted. And that's how the crew judge you. If you know what you want and you can make a clear decision forward, whatever that decision is, and you've got to do it. I mean, you can get asked 1,000 questions a day, and you've just got to make a decision and be clear with it. And I think that's one of the huge attributes. That, and being amicable, is, and treating everybody equally as well. Yes, we're in a hierarchy in the set, and in a way it has to run like that. But that doesn't mean that as people we're not equal as well. So, yeah, that's how I've always tried to run my sets.
Yeah, it's good advice. That's good advice. And yeah, that atmosphere is so important, isn't it? Because if you get that wrong, then all this other stuff starts interfering with making the film or the TV project. So let me skip ahead to Doctor Who. So now you're doing the sort of season finale of like the biggest sci-fi show in the country, and it's got a new Doctor. First off, is it more prestigious, or is it harder to get the season finales, or is that just something that's kind of, do you have to pitch for that? Is, because I would imagine that's a bigger deal, is it, doing the season finales, or am I just imagining that because it sort of feels bigger when you watch it?
Generally, yes. I mean, the way TV's looked at is you can open a series, or if it's season one, you can set the style to a degree. So the opening and the finales are usually have a little more prestige with them as well. But for me, it makes no difference. I think sometimes middle blocks have better scripts as well. So it's where the challenge is for me. So every script I look at, if I ever look at something and think I could just turn up and with my eyes closed direct this, then I never take it. I've got to have a challenge, and I've got to have a little fear in me, because that pushes my creativity. So when I had read quite a lot of the scripts on Doctor Who, I have a really good relationship with Bad Wolf from doing Discovery of Witches, the producer Vicky DeLoe I knew from Last Kingdom as well. So I looked at a lot of the scripts as well. And then when they brought me the finale, one of the great things about it was a two-parter. It was almost quite standalone. And from the very beginning, we were all describing it as the Doctor Who feature film. And that's what attracted me with it as well, that it was, just short of 2-hour piece and treating it as one. So, yeah, so that's why I went with it, and there were so many challenges in it in a different way, that because I'd looked at Doctor Who before, and I'd been offered it, and it didn't feel right for me. But now, with the change of how it was, with the ambition with Disney, with Russell T Davies coming back, it felt like, yeah, this is a challenge that I want to take on.
Yeah, it looks like it's gone up a notch. Even just budget, just everything looks bigger, and it's almost like a big American TV show. And it's so nice. So I've got 2 children. It's so nice to be able to watch something with them and watch them engage with it. So we really enjoyed the series. Thought it was really good. Love him as the Doctor. So that's kind of a bit of another jump in the amount of special effects you're having to deal with. What's that like? How do you kind of balance the creativity with doing those special effects sequences?
Yeah, I mean, Doctor Who is huge now on the VFX side of things as well. And I've worked on a lot of shows with different types of VFX, and it's a modern day skill you need as a director now as well. But for me, there's always a level with VFX. There's a level where you push it too far, you create a disconnect. And by that, I mean, you create a disconnect with the audience, and you create a disconnect with the actors performing at the time. So I always try and find a way around it. And suppose one of the great examples is in episode 7 there, we have that time window now, where there's multiple different doctors, different timelines. They go back, and it's like this big visual time machine. Now, the really easy way about going about something like that was we just put it in a green screen studio, but we didn't want to do that, and it's for two reasons. One, we wanted to create an environment in which the actors could perform and feel it. And secondly, that's not the Doctor Who way as well. A lot of things are done in camera. I always strive, first and foremost, my first point of call is, what can we do in camera? So actually, that time window, for want of a better word, was built for real. And what we did was we projected those images onto silk walls and then had it live camera tracked. And it was, and from that, I feel we got a better performance. We had a better set to work in. And ultimately, I think it landed. And it's the same with the Monster Sutek as well. I mean, obviously, he's complete VFX, but actually, we could have just green screened there. But what we didn't do that. We built a puppet. We had a live puppeteer, and then we pre-recorded the dialogue, and we had that pumped through on set with the speakers. And then every single person on set saw the pre-renders of what Sutek was going to look like. So it's as close to getting the real thing on set as you possibly can. And for me, whenever you can do something for real or create an atmosphere of reality on set, I think it's going to land better.
Yeah, amen to that. And when you get that wrong, and the actors are all they're looking in the right direction, but they're not quite, the eye lines aren't quite lining up. It just takes you out of it immediately. Having that physical thing. Yeah, I didn't realize you had a puppet, but that's awesome. So looking back on the career, what do you wish you would have known at the beginning?
Okay. One of the things you realize, I think a lot of people have the ability to direct. And by that, I mean, do cool shots, break stuff down technically, get great performance with actors. But the ability to direct in modern day TV is to direct within the ever restricting parameters of television. When I turned up on Last Kingdom, I got brought into Gareth Neam's office. Gareth Neam, multi-winning BAFTA producer. And the only thing he ever said to me was, make your days. And I went, yeah. And he went, no, Jamie, make your days. Because by that, it means complete what is on your call sheet, because you don't realize the amount of money that is at stake. If you go over by even 30 seconds, you are costing a production tens of thousands of pounds as well. It's so tight. There's so little time. So the ability to do your creativeness, direct and shoot something, but keeping it within the time parameters is a huge thing that I wish I'd have known. That's what TV directing is as well. And on top of that, dealing with the multiple politics that come with it, because there are a lot of voices in TV. There's a lot of people who want to be heard, and you've got to make a lot of people happy, and you've got to manage all of that. So yeah, I wish I'd have known that. I mean, luckily I fell into it, and because I'd produced my own stuff as a music video director, I think that helped me massively as well. I also think, a lot of it is just people management, especially with actors. You've got a lot of talented people around you. It's just, as I say, about creating that environment that they can show their talent off. And I suppose one of the more depressing things that I wish I'd have known is, this industry, unfortunately, it's not necessarily a meritocracy. Success doesn't necessarily mean longevity. It's up and down, roller coaster all the time. And there's a lot of external factors coming in this industry that determine success. What's a successful program, what you're working on at the time as well. So you can never let how well you're doing as a director, or how you're seen as a director, define you as a person. There's so many factors out of your control as well.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you'd like to hear from more industry professionals, how they got into the business and how you can do the same, or you just want to listen to some cool stories from movie sets around the world, then please do subscribe to the Honest Filmmaker podcast.